Finally, Red Dead 1 is coming to PC, and the system requirements are pretty inconsistent, I would say. Here I've got the Steam page for the game. Let's go down. It's coming out in 2 weeks, which is cool. And going down here, we can see the system requirements. Can't see what the presets are or the FPS targets, which kind of sucks. But let's go through them anyway. Let's start it off with the CPU. For the Intel side, we're using an i5-4670. And for the AMD side, we're using an FX 9590. The old AMD FX CPUs. These things were mid back then, and they're even worse now, I guess. For the RAM, we need 8 gigs. That's kind of crazy. The entire game is 12 gigs, and they're still asking for 8 gigs of RAM. The game is also from 2010. It's a remaster, but it's still the same game. And any game from 2010 would need like 2 gigs at most, or 4 gigs of RAM at most. So a pretty massive jump there. So I do want to see if this game will actually use up 8 gigs, or if that's what they put here, because that's what everyone has. Time for the fun part, which is the GPU. And for this one, we need a GTX 960. I'm guessing 2 gigs, and an R7 360, which again has 2 gigs. Kind of weird there, because the 960, I believe, should be the same as an R9 380 instead of the R7 360, but that's what they put here. And I believe the 960 is twice as powerful on paper as the R7 360. Now the 960 and the 380 come with a 2 gig variant and a 4 gig variant, but I'm guessing for this one, it's going to be 2 gigs of VRAM instead of 4 gigs, because again, the R7 360 has 2 gigs. Now I'm going to list some cards that are near the 960 in terms of power. Our first card is the 1050 Ti with around 8% extra power. Going to do a little jump here and go down to a 970 with around 60% extra power. And going down even more, we have the 1060 with around 70% extra power, which is kind of crazy. At this point, you have plenty of headroom, so no worries there. Now, one quick note about the GPU side. We need a DX12 compatible GPU. So it's not entirely about the raw power of the GPU. It is also about how new it is as well. So yeah, for the minimum spec requirement, the game isn't super intensive, obviously, but at the same time, we don't know what they're targeting, what FPS, what resolution, what preset. It could be the lowest at 720p 30 FPS. So if that is the case, that's pretty awful. But if it's 1080p, low settings, 60 FPS, then that's of course pretty decent. Time for the recommended preset. And for this one again, have no clue what they're targeting, what FPS, what resolution, what preset, but the CPU side does go up quite a bit. To be honest though, to me, these are pretty meaningless, because the game will apparently have a render distance slider, and that will obviously affect the load on the CPU and the GPU as well. And for this one, there's no info on any of that, so it's pretty pointless overall. GPU, an RTX 2070, and the RX 5700 XT. So the RTX 3060, the 1080 Ti, and the RTX 2070 Super are all going to be falling into this preset. They're all near each other in terms of power. And then you got the 4060 and the 2080 with 20% extra power versus the 2070. And of course, the 3070, the 4070, and the 3080 will have plenty of power, way above the class of these GPUs, so no worries there for those cards. Now, interesting enough, for this one, we need an SSD. Or it's not a need, but it would be ideal to have an SSD, which is interesting. Okay, before we go, I want to show you guys this real quick. I've got Red Dead 1 on the left side of the screen and Red Dead 2 on the right side of the screen, as you guys can see. So funny enough, the specs required for Red Dead 1 is way higher than Red Dead 2. As you guys can see, the CPU side, it is way lower. Again, not the main point, because the CPU specs are pretty inconsistent most of the time, so I normally ignore them. But regardless, for the GPU, we need a GTX 770 and an R9 280. Now, as far as I know, the GTX 770 is a bit faster than a 960, but the R9 285, I don't know about the R9 280, but the R9 285 is near or the same as an R9 380. And all these cards, again, are using 2 gigs to 3 gigs of VRAM, which is pretty impressive. So yeah, pretty comparable in terms of GPU power. But we all know how big Red Dead 2 is, how much detail it has, and just how good it looks in general. So the fact that they are the same is pretty concerning. But once again, we have no clue what resolution each preset is targeting and what graphics settings they are using, right? And that makes all the difference. So I wish we had some extra info on resolution, FPS, and graphics setting, so we could actually understand if the game is intensive, or if it's poorly optimized or not, or if it's just exaggerated on the spec sheet. Because coming down, we can see that Red Dead 2 will need a GTX 1060 or an RX 480. And on the other side, we can see Red Dead 1 needing an RTX 2070, way higher. So again, having that extra info on resolution and all that would make a massive difference for us, because at this point, the spec sheet is okay. It gives us a vague idea on how it's going to run, but it's still a big guessing game. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. That is the spec sheet for Red Dead 1. Hope you guys enjoyed. Oh, also, actually, another thing. I hope the game is well priced. It's coming out in 2 weeks. I'm hoping for 30 USD, at most 40 USD, because the game is playable on PC at 60 FPS with the Xenia emulator. So having the game at full price would be pretty dumb. I think it would still sell because of the convenience and the extra features and the settings and the mods and all that. But for me, I would probably skip it if it's full priced, a full price game. So yeah, this is mainly for people that want to play at 4K, above 60 FPS, and increase the settings above the console level. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Next video. See you guys there.